Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me, but it has raised me somewhat from the depths of despair. So far, you truly have been a great source of comfort to me. I hope I will be able to confide everything in you, as I have never been able to confide in anyone, and I hope that you will prove a great source of comfort and support to me. Not only because I've never had a diary before, but also because it seems to me that no one will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. And now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Let me put it more clearly, as no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. And I'm not. I have loving parents and a 16-year-old sister, and there are about 30 people I can call friends. No, on the outside I seem to have everything, except my one true friend. All I seem to be able to talk about when I'm with friends are ordinary, everyday things. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary, everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just the way things are, and unfortunately, that's not liable to change. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down all the facts the way most people would, but I want the diary to be my friend, and I'm going to call this friend Kitty. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty if I were to plunge right in, I'd better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. Our lives are not without anxiety, since we and our relatives in Germany were suffering under Hitler's anti-Jewish laws. In 1933, we moved to Holland, and in 1938, my two uncles fled Germany, finding safe refuge in North America. After May 1940, the good times were few and far between. First there was the war, then the capitulation, and then the arrival of the Germans, which is when the trouble started for the Jews. Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of anti-Jewish decrees. Jews are required to wear a yellow star. Jews are required to turn in their bicycles. Jews are forbidden to use streetcars. Jews are forbidden to ride in cars, even their own. Jews are required to do their shopping between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews are required to frequent only Jewish-owned barbershops and beauty parlors. Jews are forbidden to be out in the streets between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Jews are forbidden to attend theaters, movies, or any other forms of entertainment. Jews are forbidden to use swimming pools, tennis courts, hockey fields, or any other athletic fields. Jews are forbidden to sit in their gardens or those of their friends after 8 p.m. Jews are forbidden to visit Christians in their homes. Friends said to me, "I don't dare do anything anymore, because I'm afraid it's not allowed." None of us know what the Germans might do when they capture you. Every kind of torture is acceptable to these barbarous people. But still, life goes on.
Dearest Kitty, it seems like years since Sunday morning. So much has happened. It's as if the whole world has suddenly turned upside down. But as you can see, Kitty, I'm alive. And that's the main thing, Father says. I'm alive, all right, but don't ask where or how. You probably don't understand a word I'm saying today, so I'll begin by telling you what happened Sunday afternoon. At 3 o'clock the doorbell rang. I didn't hear it as I was out on the balcony lazily reading in the sun. A little while later, Margot appeared in the doorway looking very agitated.
Father's received a call note from the SS.
I was stunned. Call up, everyone knows what that means. Visions of concentration camps and lonely cells raced through my head. How could we let Father go to such a fate?
Of course he's not going. Mother's gone to see Mr. Van Daan.
Mr. Van Daan is a business associate of my father's who's been invited to hide his wife and son Peter with us.
Mother's asking Mr. Van Daan if we can move to our hiding place tomorrow.
We couldn't speak. The thought of Father off visiting someone in a Jewish hospital, completely unaware of what was happening. The long wait for Mother, the heat, the suspense, poor Father.
Anne, the call-up is for me, not for Father.
But you're only 16.
For some reason, girls my age are being sent on their own.
Why?
I don't know, but we won't be going. Father says we're going to hiding. Hurry, get your things.
Hiding? Where would we hide? In the city, in the country, in a house, in a shack? When? Where? How? These are all questions I wasn't allowed to ask, kept running through my mind. I was exhausted, but we needed to leave. We were wrapped up in so many layers of clothes. It looked like we were going to spend the night in a refrigerator, but no Jew in our situation would dare leave the house with a suitcase full of clothes. I was suffocating even before we left the house, but no one bothered to ask me how I felt.
Are you ready? Let's go.
We are now in hiding in the annex. It's the attic of my dad's company. The annex is a really good hiding place because it's concealed by houses on all four sides, so no one on the outside can see us. The door, too, is well hidden behind a bookcase. It's surprisingly large, and there's plenty of room for the four of us, Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan and their annoying son, Peter. Peter Van Daan and his family have been living with us for 6 weeks now, and he hasn't gotten any nicer. He's an obnoxious boy who lies around in his bed all day, only rousing himself to do a little carpentry work before returning to his nap. What a dope. No one takes him seriously since he's hypersensitive and lazy. Yesterday, he was beside himself with worry because his tongue was blue instead of pink. This rare phenomenon disappeared as quickly as it came. Today he's been walking around with a scarf on because he's got a stiff neck. His Highness has been complaining about lumbago too. Aches and pains in his heart, lungs and kidneys are also part of the course. He's an absolute hypochondriac.
I've asked myself again and again whether it would be better if we were dead now and didn't have to go through with this misery. But we all shrink from this thought. We still love life. We haven't yet forgot the voice of nature. And we keep hoping. Hoping for everything.
Dear Kitty, I've begun my schoolwork. I'm working hard at French, cramming 5 irregular verbs into my head every day. But I've forgotten much too much of what I learned in school. I adore the history of the arts, especially when it concerns writers, poets, and painters. Musicians may come later. I loathe algebra, geometry, and arithmetic. I enjoy all my other school subjects, but history's my favorite. A few school books have just arrived, and I've brought a large supply of notebooks, pencils, erasers, and labels from home. Pim, that's our pet name for father, wants me to help him with his Dutch lessons. I'm perfectly willing to tutor him in exchange for his assistance with French and other subjects. But he makes the most unbelievable mistakes. I sometimes listen to the Dutch broadcasts from London. Prince Bernard recently announced that Princess Juliana is expecting a baby in January, which I think is wonderful. No one else here understands why I take such an interest in the royal family. A few nights ago, I was the topic of discussion, and we all decided that I was an ignoramus. As a result, I threw myself into my schoolwork, as I have little desire to still be a freshman when I'm 14 or 15. Most of all, I long to move about freely and have someone help me with my homework again. In other words, to go back to school.
From time to time, Peter can be very amusing. He and I have one thing in common. We like to dress up, which makes everyone laugh. One evening we made our appearance, with Peter in one of his mother's skin-tight dresses, and me in his suit. He wore a hat, I had a cap on. The grown-ups split their sides laughing, and we enjoyed ourselves every bit as much.
We are surrounded by darkness and danger, and in our desperate search to find a way out, we keep bumping into each other. Our many Jewish friends and acquaintances are being taken away in droves. The sick, the elderly, children, babies, and pregnant women are all being marched to their death.
Albert Dussel moved in with us November 16th, 1942. He's a dentist we knew who was looking for a safe hiding place. When he first arrived, he claimed to get along really well with children and to absolutely adore them. But instead, His Excellency has turned out to be an old-fashioned disciplinarian and preacher of unbearably long sermons on manners.
It is not enough to hope that children will learn good manners by some means of osmosis or monkey see, monkey do. They must be taught. If not by their parents, then others must take the lead, especially if you are in confined living quarters, as we find ourselves in. Good manners are not only good, they're good for you and for everyone else. They make life better. So, what are the manners needed to live contentedly in this difficult situation? I think they are obvious, but some people are obviously lacking an education. First, learn how to hold your tongue. I know this may be impossible for Anne especially, but she should try, as all we ever do is hear her go on.
He considers me to be the worst behaved of the three young people that he has to put up with.
Second, be courteous at all times, saying please and thank you is in short supply in this house. Third, put others before yourself. Holding the door for ladies and your elders is an excellent example. It is literally putting others first before yourself. For example, you come to the door at the same time as someone else. You barge in, sending the other person flying, whereas I hold the door and say, after you. Now, everyone but you would agree that holding the door is good manners and barging in is bad manners. But why? Because by me holding the door, I'm putting others first. But by you barging in, you're putting yourself first. The same is true about passing things along the table instead of grabbing them, turning the music down when I don't want to listen and I don't have to, or interrupting people when they're speaking instead of waiting until only after they finish.
Blah, blah, blah. He just went on and on. Mr. Dussel makes up everything as he goes along, and anyone wishing to contradict His Majesty had better think twice. The thing is, Dussel is terribly lax when it comes to obeying the rules of the house. He is such a hypocrite. But when I don't obey his made-up rules that nobody's agreed to in the first place, he spends most of his time complaining about me to Mother. It's all I can do to avoid having the same old scoldings and admonitions repeatedly flung at my head and to pretend not to hear. This wouldn't be so bad if Mr. Dussel weren't such a tattletale and hadn't singled out Mother to be the recipient of his reports. If Mr. Dussel just read me the riot act, Mother lectures me all over again, this time throwing the whole book at my head. And if I'm really lucky, Mrs. Van D calls me to account 5 minutes later and lays down the law as well. They're all driving me crazy.
Although I'm extremely diligent when it comes to my schoolwork and can practically follow the English spoken on BBC Home Service on the radio, I still spend many of my Sundays sorting out my movie star collection, which has grown to a very respectable size. On Saturday we were discussing the latest movies, and I then proceeded to rattle off the names of the leading actors and actresses and the reviews. Everyone is never failed to be surprised at how accurately I can list the actors in any given movie, even after a year. I know all the plots, the stars, and the reviews by heart.
I'd die to be able to go to the movies again.
You don't need to go to the movies yourself because you know all the plots, the names of the stars, and the reviews by heart.
Mother really knows how to deflate me. Whenever I can come in sailing with a new hairdo, I can read the disapproval on her face, and I can be sure to be asked.
Which movie star are you trying to imitate now?
It's my own invention.
Really?
Can you stop making insolent remarks?
Don't talk to me that way.
As for the hairdo, I get so sick and tired of her remarks that I race to the bathroom and restore my hair to its natural mass of messy curls. And now another item has been added to my list of sins.
Anne, are you in bed? I'll be right there.
Last night I was lying in bed, waiting for Father to talk me in and say my prayers with me, when Mother came into the room and asked very gently,
Anne, Daddy isn't ready. How about if I listen to your prayers tonight?
"No, Momsy."
I don't want to be angry with you. I can't make you love me.
I lay still, thinking how mean it was of me to reject her so cruelly. but I also knew that I was incapable of answering her any other way. I can't be a hypocrite and pray with her. It just doesn't work like that. I felt sorry for Mother. Very, very sorry. Because for the first time in my life, I noticed she wasn't indifferent to my coldness. I saw the sorrow in her face when she spoke about not being able to make me love her. It's hard to tell the truth. And yet the truth is that she's the one who's rejected me. She's the one whose tactless comments and cruel jokes about matters that I don't think are funny have made me insensitive to any sign of love on her part.
Everyone, I think Anne has a crush on somebody. Oh, look, she's turning red. That means she'll be getting married soon. We'll have to prepare for an annex wedding. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? No words? Stop staring at me like a fool.
Oh, you are cruel.
Why would you say that?
Just listen to yourself.
You're a fun one to talk. You take everything for granted. When you're sewing, the entire floor is covered in pins. Who picks that up? And the other day you left the manicure set lying around again. You never put that away either.
That was Margot.
Stop
I always
making...
getting blamed.
No! Stop making excuses! You little excuse maker. What's the matter now? Have you got a headache?
Leave me alone.
You don't appreciate all I do for you.
Just as my heart sinks every time I hear her harsh words. That's how her heart sank when she realized there was no more love between us. She cried half the night, didn't get any sleep. Father has avoided looking at me, and if his eyes do happen to cross mine, I can read his unspoken words. How can you be so unkind? How dare you make your mother so sad? Everyone expects me to apologize, but this is not something I can apologize for. Because I told the truth, and sooner or later Mother is bound to find out anyway. I seem to be indifferent to Mother's tears and Father's glances. And I am. Because both of them are now feeling what I've always felt. I can only feel sorry for Mother, who will have to figure out what her attitude should be all by herself. For my part, I will continue to remain silent and aloof, and I don't intend to shrink from the truth, because the longer it is postponed, the harder it will be for them when they do hear it.
Let something happen soon, even an air raid. Nothing can be more crushing than this anxiety.
Oh, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Anna. Happy birthday to you.
Dear Kitty, the poem Father composed for my birthday is too nice to keep to myself. It goes as so.
You're living with old folks. All you can do is put up with their nagging. It's hard, but it's true. The pill may be bitter, but down it must go. For it's meant to keep the peace, you know. These last few weeks have not been in vain, since wasting time does not go against your brain. You read and study nearly all the day, determined to chase the boredom away. The more difficult question, much harder to bear, is what on earth am I going to wear? I want to wear panties. My shirts are too tight. My shirt is a loincloth. Oh, I'm such a sight. To put off my shoes, I was off with my toes. Oh, I'm plagued with so many woes.
It's a good poem. Don't you think it's a good poem? For the rest, I've been truly spoiled, receiving a number of lovely presents, including a book on my favorite subject, Greek and Roman mythology. Nor can I complain about the lack of candy I received. Everyone dipped into their last reserves, and I got more than I deserve.
Lise! 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 Lise? Hannah Lee Gosler, or Lisa as she was called at school, was my best friend. She was a bit on the strange side, usually shy, but outspoken at home. She blabs whatever you tell her to her mother. But she says what she thinks. And lately, I've come to appreciate that a great deal.
Anna and I met for the first time in 1934, when both our families came from Germany to Holland. We met at a grocery store. When my mother brought me to kindergarten the next day, I didn't know the language or anyone. I saw only Anna's back. She was making music with bells. Anna turned around, ran into my arms, and I ran into hers. And from then on, we were friends.
I told on the class once.
It was the French tests.
I helped Lise during the test, as she was having great difficulty.
Our teacher, Mr. Premsela, found out, and we got a big fat F.
Great indignation.
I told him the entire class had their books open under their desks, and they called us a bunch of tattletales.
2 days later, Mr. Premsela sprang the test on us again.
After that, nobody in the class would talk to us, and we were branded as snitches.
I caved in and wrote a letter of apology from Lisa myself. It went something like this. Anne Frank
and Lise Gosler
hereby offer our sincere apology for our cowardly act of betrayal on the matter of the French test.
However, the deed was done before we had the time to think.
And we freely admit that we alone should have been punished.
We believe that everyone is liable to let a word or sentence slip out in anger from time to time, and this can result in an unpleasant situation.
Even though it wasn't meant to.
Furthermore, we ask those of you who have been ignoring us to please stop.
And either come to us and give us a good scolding, or ask us for a favour.
Which we will gladly grant.
If at all possible. Anne Frank
and Lise Gosler.
Last night, just as I was falling asleep, Hannah Lee suddenly appeared before me. I saw her there,
dressed in rags, her face thin and worn. She looked at me with such sadness and reproach in her enormous eyes that I could read the message in them.
Oh, Anne, why have you deserted me? Help me! Help me! Rescue me from this hell!
And I can't help her. All I can do is stand by and watch while other people suffer and die. All I can do is pray to God to bring her back to us. Dear God, I have everything I could wish for, while fate has her in its deadly clutches. She was as devout as I am, maybe even more so. And she too wanted to do what was right. So why have I been chosen to live, while she's probably going to die? What's the difference between us? Why are we so far apart? I've got to stop dwelling on this. It won't get me anywhere. I keep seeing her enormous eyes, and they haunt me. Did Hannah Lee really and truly believe in God? Or was religion merely foisted upon her?
Yesterday afternoon, I asked Mr. Dussel whether he would allow me use the table in our room 2 afternoons a week from 4 to 5:30. I already sit there every day from 2:30 to 4 while Dussel takes a nap. But the rest of the time, the room and the table are off limits to me. I asked Dussel very politely. And what do you think the learned gentleman's reply was?
No.
No, just plain no. I was incensed and wasn't about to let myself be put off like that.
I have to study too, you know, and if I can't do that in the afternoons, I won't be able to fit it in at all. I have to finish the task I've set for myself. Otherwise, there's no point in starting. Besides, you aren't serious about your studies. Mythology? What kind of work is that? Reading and knitting don't count either. I use that table, and I'm not going to give it up.
Mr. Dussel, when you first came here, we agreed that the room was to be shared by the two of us. If we were to divide it fairly, you'd have the entire morning and I'd have the entire afternoon. I'm not asking for that much, but 2 afternoons a week does seem reasonable to me.
You have no business talking about your rights to the room. Where am I supposed to go? Maybe I should ask Mr. Van D to build me a cubbyhole in the attic. You're not the only one who can't find a quiet place to work. You're always looking for a fight. It's impossible to talk to you. You're shamefully self-centered. No one else matters, as long as you get your way. I've never seen such a child.
He went on and on until there was such a deluge of words, I could hardly keep up. For one fleeting moment, I thought, him and his lies. I'll smack his ugly mug so hard he'll go bouncing off the wall. But the next moment I thought, calm down. He's not worth getting so upset about. I told Father the entire story, and he decided to talk to Dussel that very same evening. Dussel finally had to give in, and I was granted the opportunity to work without interruption 2 afternoons a week. Dussel looked very sullen, didn't speak to me for 2 days, and made sure he occupied the table from 5 to 5:30. All very childish, of course.
Dear Kitty, Mrs. Van Daan, who I like to call Madame, is unbearable. She's known to be exceedingly egotistical, extremely cunning, and excessively flirtatious.
Hey, boys.
There's no question about it. She's a truly despicable person who takes special delight not only in raising her own children, but in helping others raise theirs. She keeps telling me,
You should talk less, mind your own business, and be more modest.
but I seem doomed to failure. If I take a small helping of a vegetable I loathe and eat potatoes instead, she can't get over how spoiled I am.
Come on, Anne. Eat some more vegetables.
No, thank you, ma'am. The potatoes are more than enough.
Vegetables are good for you, though Mother says so too. You should have been at our house, where children were brought up the way they should be. I don't call this a proper upbringing. Anne is terribly spoilt. I'd never allow that if she were my daughter.
Thank goodness I'm not. Father told Mrs. Van Daan that I was very well brought up and had learned not to respond to her interminable sermons.
He didn't really mean it.
And he said to her that as far as the vegetables are concerned, look who's calling the kettle black.
Such a child!
Mrs. Van D was soundly defeated. The pot calling the kettle black refers, of course, to Madame herself, since she can't tolerate beans or any sort of cabbage in the evening because they give her gas.
Anne, was that you?
No.
He!
The fox smells its own hole, Mrs. Van Daan.
You're so hilarious.
It's so funny to see how quickly Mrs. Van Daan flushes. Then she says some ridiculous thing like,
I'm very modest and retiring, much more so than my husband.
This clearly illustrates that she's not exactly what you'd call modest. My mother replied that we don't let ourselves be pushed around, like she does with her husband.
Oh, but Mrs. Frank, I don't understand what you mean. I'm extremely modest and retiring. How can you say that I'm pushy?
Mother didn't say you were pushy, but no one would describe you as having a retiring disposition.
I'd like to know in what way I'm pushy. If I didn't look out for myself around here, no one else would. And I'd soon starve. But that doesn't mean I'm not as modest and retiring as your father.
Mother had no choice but to laugh at this ridiculous self-defense, which irritated Mrs. Van D. She continued her magnificent account of herself.
And as for all the things I do for this household, cooking, cleaning, I even tolerate that brat. No thanks for any of it. Honestly, they'd miss me if I was gone.
But then she got so tangled up in her own words, she was finally just about to leave the room when her eyes fell upon me. As luck would have it, I was shaking my head in a combination of compassion and irony. I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I had followed her tirade so attentively that my reaction was completely involuntary. Mrs. Van D gave me a tongue lashing.
Du bist das schlimmste Kind, das jemals gab. Du denkst, du bist so schlau, aber alles, was du bist, ist ein kluger Ersch. Wenn du mein Kind wärst, würde ich dir ein paar Manieren beibringen.
Teach me some manners? I've learned one thing. You only really get to know a person after a fight. Only then you can judge their true character. I just finished writing this about Mrs. Van Daan when she walked into the room.
Hey, Anne. Can't I even take a peek at your diary?
No, Mrs. Van Daan.
Just the last page, then.
No, not even the last page, Mrs. Van Daan.
Du bist ein verwöhntes Kind.
I'm not spoiled. Mother thinks that Mrs. Van Daan is too stupid for words.
Huh, that's not true. I'm the smartest woman here.
Margot, that's just too unimportant.
What, Margot? What does she know? She's just a child. A stupid teenager.
Dad?
Her father fancies me.
He doesn't fancy you. He thinks that you're too ugly. Literally and figuratively.
Excuse me, young lady.
Don't start. And after a long observation, I've come to the conclusion that you're all three of the above. Stupid, unimportant, and ugly. And lots more besides. She has so many bad traits. Why would you sing out just one of them? Don't condemn me, but think of me as the person who sometimes reaches bursting point.
I see myself alone in a dungeon, without father or mother, or I'm roaming the streets, or the annex is on fire, or they come in the middle of the night to take us away, and I crawl under my bed in desperation. I see it all as if it were actually taking place. To think it might all happen soon.
On Sunday evening, everyone except Father and me was clustered around the radio listening to the immortal music of the German masters. Dussel kept twisting and turning the knobs, which annoyed Peter, and the others too. After restraining himself for half an hour, Peter said,
Stop fiddling with the radio. You're just doing that to annoy people and get attention.
Mr. Van Daan sided with him and Dussel had to back down. That was the end of it, but Peter has apparently taken the matter very much to heart because Peter came to me and told me what happened.
Well, it's like this. I don't usually talk much since I know beforehand I'll just get all tongue-tied. I start stuttering and blushing and I twist my words around so much I finally have to stop because I can't find the right words. That's what happened yesterday. I meant to say something entirely different, but once I started, I got all mixed up. It's awful. I used to have a bad habit, and sometimes I wish I still did. Whenever I was mad at someone, I'd beat them up instead of arguing with them. I know this method won't get me anywhere, and that's why I admire you. You're never at loss for words. You say exactly what you want, and you aren't in the least bit shy.
No, you're wrong about that. Most of what I say comes out very differently from the way that I planned. Plus, I talk too much and too long, and that's just as bad.
Maybe. But you have the advantage that no one can see you're embarrassed. You don't blush or go to pieces.
Peter is not as bad as I thought. He's becoming a good friend. Now, whenever I go upstairs, it's so I can see him. Now that I have something to look forward to, my life here has improved greatly.
This morning, when I had nothing to do, I leafed through the pages of my diary and came across so many letters dealing with the subject of mother in such strong terms. I was shocked. I said to myself, Anne, is that really you talking about hate? Oh, Anne, how could you? I tried to understand the Anne of last year and make apologies for her, because as long as I leave you with these accusations and don't even attempt to explain what prompted them, my conscience won't be clear. I was suffering then, and still do, of thoughts that keep my head under water and allow me to see things only from my own perspective, instead of calmly considering what the others had said and acting as they would have done. I hid inside myself, thought of no one but myself, and calmly wrote down all my joy, sarcasm, and sorrow into my diary. Because this diary has become a kind of memory book. It means a great deal to me, but I could easily write over and done with on many of its pages. I was furious at Mother.
Simply can't stand Mother. And I have to force myself not to snap at her all the time and to stay calm when I'd rather slap her across the face. I don't know why I've taken such a terrible dislike to her. I don't love her. I can't imagine Mother dying someday. It's very mean of me, but that's how I feel.
It's true. She didn't understand me, but I didn't understand her either, because she loved me. She was tender and affectionate, but because of the difficult situations I put her in and the sad circumstances she found herself in, she was nervous and irritable, so I can understand why she was often so short with me. I was offended, took it far too much to heart, and was insolent and beastly, which in turn made her unhappy. We were caught in a vicious circle of unpleasantness and sorrow. Not a very happy period for either of us, but at least it's coming to an end. The period of tearfully passing judgment on Mother is finally over.
Dearest Kitty, beautiful music moves me to the very depths of my soul. I'm currently going through a dance and ballet craze. I have been diligently practicing my dance steps every evening. I've made an ultra-modern dance costume out of a lacy slip belonging to Mumsy. Big corded ribbon completes the ensemble. My stiff limbs are well on their way to becoming as limber as they used to be. A terrific exercise is to sit on the floor, use a heel in each hand, and raise both legs into the air. I have to sit on a cushion though,
Otherwise, my poor backside really takes a beating. Believe me, when you've been locked up like I have, it can get too much for you sometimes. Oh, how I long to ride a bike, dance, whistle, look at the world, feel young, and know that I am free. And yet I can't let it show. Imagine if all of us cooped up in here were to feel sorry for ourselves, or to go about with the discontent clearly visible on our faces. Where would that get us? I sometimes wonder if anyone will ever understand what I mean. If they could overlook my ingratitude and not worry about whether or not I'm Jewish and simply see me as a teenager, badly in need of some good plain fun. I don't know. And I don't think I could ever talk about it with anyone. Or I'm sure I'd start to cry. Crying brings relief. As long as you don't cry alone. Despite all my theories and efforts, I miss every day and every hour of the day having a mother who understands me. That's why with everything I do and write, I imagine the kind of mother I'd like to be to my children later on. The kind of mother who doesn't take everything people say too seriously, but who does take me seriously. I don't know how to describe what I mean, but the word mom says it all. Do you know what I've come up with? In order to give myself the feeling of calling my mother mum, I often call her Mumsy. Sometimes I shorten it to Mums. An imperfect mum. I wish I could honour her by removing the S. It's a good thing she doesn't realise this, as it would only make her unhappy.
On Sunday morning, I noticed to my great joy that Peter kept looking at me. Not in the usual way. I don't know. I can't explain it. But I suddenly had the feeling that he wasn't as in love with Margot as I used to think. All day long, I tried not to look at him as much because whenever I did, I caught him looking at me, and well, that made me feel wonderful inside. And that's not a feeling I should have too often.
In bed at night, with the strange feeling of wanting to be different than I am.
Or being different than I want to be.
Or perhaps behaving differently than I am or want to be.
Tonight when I was hanging up my apron after doing the dishes, Peter called me over.
Anne, My parents have had an argument and are not speaking to each other.
I'm sorry, Peter.
Please promise me you won't say anything or make remarks about it when you're around them.
You must think of me an awful blabbermouth.
It's just that I don't want them blowing up again, and if they did, they'd blame you.
That's probably true. I get blamed for everything. But you don't have to worry about me. I've learned not to blab everything I hear. I never repeat what you tell me. The only thing is, I could see they weren't talking, and I already told Margot, but I'm sure she won't pass it on.
I'm glad to hear that.
Margot and I are terrible gossips, and I'm learning to control myself. But as much as I want to stop gossiping, there's nothing I like better than discussing Mr. Dussel.
Well, it's good that you admit it. He's an idiot anyway, so it's okay.
I'm sorry, Peter. I really don't like your parents.
You don't?
As long as we're being honest, why shouldn't I tell you this as well? You can see their faults too, can't you?
I never talked about them to anyone before.
Maybe it's better for you to talk to my father. You can tell him anything. He won't pass it on.
I know. He's a real pal.
You like him a lot, don't you? Well, he likes you too, you know.
You think so?
Yes. He says nice things about you. He lets them slip now and then. Yes, Kitty. Peter's a terrific guy. Just like father.
Last night I dreamt I was standing in Peter's room. I said something. I can't remember what. And then he gave me a kiss and said,
I don't love you all that much, you know. You shouldn't flirt so much.
In a pleading and desperate voice, I said, I'm not flirting, Peter. Both Peter and I are struggling with our innermost feelings and are too vulnerable to be dealt with so roughly. Whenever that happens, I want to run outside or hide my feelings. Instead, I bang the pots and pans, splash the water, and am generally noisy so that everyone wishes I were miles away. Peter's reaction is to shut himself up. Say little. Sit quiet. While carefully hiding his true self. But when and how will we finally reach each other?
Ordinary people, ordinary girls, teenagers like myself, would think I'm a little nuts with all my self-pity. But that's just it. I pour my heart out to you, and the rest of the time I act impudent, cheerful and self-confident, to avoid questions.
For a long time now, I didn't know why I was bothering to do any schoolwork. The end of the war still seemed so far away, so unreal, like a fairy tale. If the war isn't over by September, I won't go back to school. However, I don't want to be 2 years behind when I do go back. But now it's nearly over. I finally realized that I must do my schoolwork to keep from being ignorant, to get on in life, to become a writer, because that's what I want. I know I can write. A few of my stories are good. My descriptions of the secret annex are humorous. Much of my diary is vivid and alive, but it remains to be seen whether I really have talent. When I write, I can shake off all my cares. My sorrow disappears. My spirits are revived. But, and it's a big question, will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever become a journalist or a writer? I hope so. Oh, I hope so very much, because writing allows me to record everything. My thoughts, ideals, fantasies. So onward and upward, with renewed spirits. It'll all work out, because I'm determined to write.
I simply can't imagine the world will ever be normal again for us. I do talk about after the war. But it's as if I were talking about a castle in the air. Something that will never come true.
Dearest Kitty, remember, since yesterday was a red letter day for me, isn't it an important day for every girl when she gets her first kiss? Well, then it's no less important for me. Peter gave me a kiss through my hair, half on my left ear, half on my cheek. I tore downstairs without looking back. Oh, I can't tell you, Kitty, the feeling that ran through me. I was too happy for words. And I know I'm starting at a young age. Do you think father and mother would approve of a girl of 14 kissing a 17-and-a-half-year-old boy? I doubt they would, but I have to trust my own judgment on the matter. It's so peaceful lying in his arms, so thrilling to feel his cheek against mine, so wonderful to know there's someone waiting for me. But, and there is a but, do you think Peter would want to leave it at that? He is a boy. Oh, Anna, terribly shocking. But really, it isn't all that shocking. We're cooped up here, cut off from the world, anxious and fearful, especially now. Why should we stay apart when we love each other? Why shouldn't we hug and kiss in times like these? Why should we wait till we're a suitable age? Why should we ask anyone's permission? Peter has reached a part of me that no one has ever reached before, except in my dreams. He's taken hold of me, turned me inside out. Oh, Peter, what have you done to me? What do you want from me? Where will this lead?
One of the many questions that has often bothered me is why women have been, and still are, thought to be so inferior to men. It's easy to say it's unfair, but that's not enough for me. I'd really like to know the reason behind this great injustice. Men presumably dominated women from the very beginning because of their greater physical strength. It's men who earn a living, beget children and do as they please. Fortunately, education, work and progress have opened women's eyes. In many countries they've been granted equal rights. Many people, mainly women, but also men, now realise how wrong it was to tolerate these state of affairs for so long. Modern women want the right to be completely independent. But that's not all. Women should be respected as well. Generally speaking, men are held in great esteem in all parts of the world. So why shouldn't women have their share? Soldiers and war heroes are honoured and commemorated. Explorers are granted immortal fame. Martyrs are revered. But how many people look upon women too as soldiers? In the book Soldiers on the Home Front, I was greatly struck by the fact in childbirth alone, women commonly suffer more pain, illness and misery than any war hero ever does. And what's her reward for enduring all that pain? Nothing. That's right. She gets pushed aside when she's disfigured by birth. Her children soon leave. Her beauty is gone. Women who struggle and suffer pain to ensure the continuation of the human race make much tougher and more courageous soldiers than all those big-mouthed freedom-fighting heroes put together. I don't mean to imply that women should stop having children. On the contrary, nature intended them to, and that's the way it should be. What I condemn are our systems and values, and men who don't acknowledge how great, difficult, but ultimately beautiful a woman-sharing society is. I believe that in the course of the next century, the notion that it's a woman's duty to have children will change and make way for the respect and admiration of all women.
Not being able to go outside upsets me more than I can say. And I'm terrified our hiding place will be discovered and will be shot.
Dearest Kitty, deep down, the young are lonelier than the old. I read this in a book somewhere, and it's stuck in my mind. As far as I can tell, it's true. So if you're wondering whether it's harder for the adults here than for the children, the answer is no. It's certainly not. Older people have opinions about everything, and they're sure of themselves and their actions. It's twice as hard for us young people to hold on to our opinions at a time when ideals are being shattered and destroyed, when the worst of human nature predominates, when everyone has come to doubt truth, justice, and God. It's difficult in times like these. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet, I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel like everything will change for the better. That this cruelty too shall end. That peace and tranquility will return once more. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. Perhaps the day will come when I'll be able to realize them.
The Allies are winning the war, and it won't be long before life goes back to normal. The prospect of going back to school is making me so happy. I know I shouldn't anticipate events, but forgive me, Kitty. They don't call me a bundle of contradictions for nothing.
Dearest Kitty, a bundle of contradictions is what they call me.
What does contradiction mean?
I'm split.
One side contains my exuberant cheerfulness, my flippancy, my joy in life, and above all, my ability to appreciate the lighter side of things. By that, I mean not finding anything wrong with flirtation, a kiss, an embrace, an off-colour joke.
This side of me is usually lying in waiting to ambush the other one, which is much purer, deeper, and finer. No one knows Anna's better side. That's why most people can't stand me.
Oh, I can be an amusing clown for an afternoon. Sort of like what a romantic movie is to a profound thinker. A mere diversion, a comic interlude, something that is soon forgotten. Not bad, but not particularly good either.
My lighter, more superficial side will always steal a march on the deeper side, and therefore always win. You can't imagine how often I've tried to push away this Anne, which is only half of what is known as and beat her down, hide her. But it doesn't work. And I know why.
I'm afraid that people who know me as I usually am will discover that I have a better side, a deeper and a finer side.
I'm afraid they'll mock me, think I'm ridiculous and sentimental, and not take me seriously.
And trust me, I am used to not being taken seriously.
Only the light-hearted Daans is used to it, and can put up with it. If I force the good Anne into the spotlight for even 15 minutes, she shuts up like a clown the moment she's called upon to speak, and lets Anne number one do all the talking.
And so, before I realise it, the good Anne has disappeared. Anne number one is never seen in company, although she almost always makes an appearance when I'm alone.
I know exactly how I'd like to be, how I am on the inside. I'm guided by the pure Anne then. But on the outside, I'm nothing but a frolicsome little goat tugging at its tethers.
As I've told you, what I say is not what I feel. Which is why I have a reputation for being boy crazy, as well as a flirt, a smart aleck, and a reader of romances. The happy-go-lucky Anne laughs, gives a flippant reply, shrugs her shoulders, and pretends she doesn't give a darn.
Quiet Anne reacts just the opposite way.
If I'm completely honest, I have to admit that it does matter to me that I am trying my very best to change myself, but that I am always up against a more powerful enemy. A voice within me is sobbing.
Leave me alone. Let me at least have one night when I don't cry myself to sleep with my eyes burning and my head pounding. Let me get away. Away from everything. Away from this world.
But I can't do that. I can't let them see my doubts, or the wounds they've inflicted on me. I couldn't bear their sympathy or their good-humoured derision, because it would only make me want to scream even more.
That's what's become here. You're surrounded by negative opinions, dismayed looks, and mocking faces. And all because you don't listen to your own better half.
Believe me, I would like to listen. But I can't. Because if I'm quiet and serious, everyone thinks I'm putting on a new act, and I have to save myself with a joke. And then I'm not even talking about my own family, who assume I must be sick, stuff me with aspirins and sedatives, feel my neck and my forehead and ask about my bowel movements and berate me for being in a bad mood until I just can't keep it up anymore. Because when everybody starts hovering over me, I get cross, and then the sad, and I finally end up turning my heart inside out. The good part on the inside, and the bad part on the outside. And I keep trying to find a way to become what I'd like to be and what I could be if only. If only.
If only there were no other people in the whole world.
If only there were no other people in the whole world.
In August 1944, Anne, her family, and the others in hiding were discovered.
Everyone in the annex was deported first to Westerbork transit camp, and then on to Auschwitz.
Upon arrival, the men and women were separated. Anne's mom, Margot, and Anne stayed in a barrack, hauling heavy stones and grass mats during the day.
Anne's mother died on January 6th, 1945, from hunger and exhaustion.
Anne and her sister Margot were transported to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp.
There, facing unsanitary conditions and having no food, the sisters contracted typhus.
They both died in March 1945, just a few weeks before the camp was liberated.
2 secretaries working in the building where the secret annex was found Anne's diaries strewn all over the floor.
They were hidden away in a desk drawer for safekeeping.
After the war, when it became clear that Anne was dead, the diaries were given to her father, Otto Frank. He was the only survivor of the Frank family.
After initially feeling unsure about publishing Anne's diary, Otto Frank decided to fulfill his daughter's wish and published her diary on the 25th of June 1947.
It has become one of the most widely known books, and it has been translated into over 60 languages.
I knew that Anna wrote a diary. She left her diary with me at night in a briefcase next to my bed. I had promised her never to look in. I never did. When I returned and had the news that my children would not come back, the diary was given to me and had been saved, I should say, by a miracle. For me, it was a revelation.
there was revealed a completely different Anna. It was a child that I had lost. I had no idea of the depths of her thoughts and feelings, her seriousness, especially her self-criticism. She never really showed this kind of inner feeling. She talked about many things, we criticized many things, but what really her feelings were, I could only see from the diary. And my conclusion is, as I have been in very, very good terms with Anna, is that most parents don't really know their children. So I know too that in reading the diary, parents and teachers will learn a lot. To build up the future, you must first know the past.
Everyone has inside a piece of good news. The good news is, you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, what you can accomplish, and what your true potential is.